So TiO2 is maybe becoming the overarching story of 2022, probably 2023 at this point.
Hey everybody, it's Mark. Thanks for joining me today. With me today on my podcast is Clay Fenstermaker, and Clay is the Vice President of Manufacturing for Dunn-Edwards. Dunn-Edwards is a left coast paint manufacturer. They primarily work in the West and the Southwest of the United States. They go about as far as Texas, and they're a hybrid. They have their own company-owned stores, about 150 of them, as I recall, as well as independent dealers through that area. And also, if I'm not mistaken, they sell in some of the national chains as well. The reason I wanted to have Clay on is as we were putting these together, and I have a producer help me put some of these together, my producer, Jerry, called me and said, you got to have Clay on. He's the most straightforward guy that I've spoken to as it relates to things like shortages and inflation and stuff like that. And I've been looking to have somebody like that on. I've been doing a lot of writing about what's happening in the industry as far as inflation goes and ongoing shortages. It's nice to have somebody step up and back up some of the contentions that I'm making. And so Clay is really straightforward. Unfortunately, the news that he has is not good for paint dealers. I think it's likely that we're in for a sustained period of continued shortages as well as inflation in the price of paint. We talk about how some of the resin shortages have abated, but there are still continued shortages with the other chemicals in paint, not resin related, that are struggling to get out to the paint factories. And now, of course, the war in Ukraine and Russia, two very large titanium dioxide producers, throwing the titanium dioxide market into disarray. I think it's likely that paint dealers are in for a sustained period of inflation in the price of paint. So give Clay a listen, like and subscribe, reach out to me if there's a topic that you want to see me cover. I'm always looking for good ideas and enjoy my conversation with Clay. Hey everybody, thanks for joining me today. With me today on my podcast is Clay Fenstermaker. Clay is the Vice President of Manufacturing for Dunn-Edwards. That's the Los Angeles paint manufacturer. Clay, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Mark. Good to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks for making the time. And Dunn-Edwards, we had talked a little bit about during our prep, is no longer an independent company. You guys have a larger ownership principle. Who is that?
With Nippon Paints, which based out of primarily Asia, and they are the fourth largest paint company in the world, and have been a great partner for Dunn-Edwards. They were looking to get into the architectural market here in the U.S. and have been partners supporting us in expansion efforts here.
Do they talk at all about their expansion plans into the rest of the United States? I know that you guys are mostly headquartered in the West right now.
Yeah, we're really headquarters in the West, focused in the Southwest, primarily serve 5 states. We do have an extensive dealer network, though, that branches out through a dozen states right now. Also internationally, we sell out of 13 different countries. But right now we're focused a lot on some organic growth and looking at other partnerships and routes to bring product to market.
And so why don't you tell us a little bit before we get into our conversation of your path in the paint business?
So I joined Dunn-Edwards back in 2009, and a little bit back on Dunn-Edwards in 2009, quite a turnover within the company. Carl Altrigott came in as CEO. Rolled over a lot of the leadership and recognized that the manufacturing capabilities here didn't match the name brand and the performance of the products that we had. So opted to just reset the whole manufacturing systems. Meanwhile, Dunn-Edwards hadn't opened a new plant since the 1970s. And I came in with an automotive background doing international plant startups. So I was recruited to come in and help start up this new paint plant where I'm currently sitting in Phoenix, Arizona. And really the goal of just revolutionizing, bringing in a lot of new technologies and automation into paint making and bringing it, well into the 21st century here.
And so you guys said that you distributed to about 15 states as well as internationally. Are you selling to independent retailers in all those states? Are those your own stores? What does your distribution model look like?
Yeah, so we go primarily through our own stores. That's definitely the bulk of our sales. We're at about 150 stores in 5 states right now. We reach north into the Bay Area in California, get into the edge of Texas and El Paso, kind of give you a feel for where we're at, primarily right down in the southwest corner of the U.S.
And how far out from that is your dealer base? Is it that same general distribution area?
Yeah, primarily. I mean, we've got them scattered a little bit. I think probably Kentucky is our farthest east. We get up into Montana, Wyoming. Certainly, open to other opportunities that are out there. But that's where our sales force is at, and the knowledge and experience of our sales force is one of the strengths that we can offer to dealers. So just a nice fit to be in that region.
And do you have paint available? That's the question that dealers are asking me. When they ask for the name of a manufacturer, just give me the names of people that have paint available.
Yeah, so it's a nice change to actually have some paint, and that has been the name of the game certainly for at least the last year, if you don't tack in all the headaches of COVID that came on before that. We're certainly getting stocked back up, not entirely back to where I want to be, but things are coming together, which is a nice change over these last couple months.
Oh, well, good. So let's talk a little bit about shortages. One of the reasons why you're on the show with me today is my producer, Jerry, who helps me put these episodes together, said that you were as direct and straightforward and honest as any paint executive he had spoken to about things like shortages and other things that you guys were discussing. And so that's why I thought, well, let's get this guy on. So let's just jump right into it. What can dealers expect as it relates to shortages in the near term?
It's become a scattered challenge right now. I think, as things really kicked off with Winter Storm Uri back in Texas, it was really a resin issue, but really that storm was the straw that broke the camel's back. There were so many challenges, so many problems in the global economy at the time that just pushed it over the edge. And it's kind of been followed by one thing after another since. But I would say, as far as what to expect, there was just this very broad pressure on resins, which obviously affect every single product you can make for paint. Since then, it's become a lot more targeted and scattered, and a changing game on a regular basis as far as what the challenges are. A variety of additives that have come under pressure, which hit different products at different times, transportation looming over everything. And then certainly the latest one, the war in Ukraine, bringing a lot of pressure on certainly anything coming out of Europe. And you've also got to look upstream at supply components to products. Even if you get something domestically, they're bringing in some component from Europe that's causing problems. I guess a wandering answer to say there are a lot of different things going on and a lot of challenges still present. But, there is paint out there, to your original question.
And so one of the things I've heard from a number of the manufacturers that I've spoken to is what you alluded to before. I'd love to talk about that a little bit, which is the general availability of resin, but difficulty finding the one or two small pieces that you need to finish products, which is why sometimes it seems like companies can be out of one particular product or type of product for so long.
One of our products gets a resin with precursors and some finished resin out of Germany. And they've got all the energy crisis going on there with the reduction in Russian supplies, and have been far behind. So we've got one product line that's heavily challenged right now, as other things are coming back together for us.
Because you have 39 of the 40 ingredients that you need to make it. And listen, all of a sudden, number 40 becomes very important when you can't get your hands on it.
You got it. That's exactly the problem.
And so you mentioned briefly the war in Ukraine. Anybody watching this today, this is being filmed on the 20th of April. If you're watching or listening, right about this moment, the town of Mariupol is about to fall into Russian hands. And if you watch the news, the last bit of land that's in control of the Ukrainians is a steel facility that's 4 square miles. And I look at that and I think to myself, well, that's your TiO2, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly there's some TiO2 that comes out of the Ukraine. They supplied 40,000 tons a year. you can look at the big picture. Some of that is offset. Russia was importing 25,000 tons, and that's not being supplied anymore. Beyond some of the TiO2 production, they supplied quite a bit of chloride ore to manufacturers here in North America. So that's some more strain on TiO2 from that angle as well. So TiO2 is maybe becoming the overarching story of 2022, probably 2023 at this point.
And that is the one ingredient that cannot be worked around, correct?
Well, if you really like selling those deep colors, so hopefully make a push for those dark blues and reds, and we'll be okay.
Right. Other than that, to your point, there's not a workaround. Like some of the other chemicals, you can find replacements, or even in the course of 6 months of lab time, you can maybe create a replacement that works. But TiO2 is irreplaceable, correct?
That's correct. There's some minor offset opportunities to try to stretch out what you get, but you're very accurate. You're dead in the water without TiO2.
And so with that in mind, what are you expecting as far as inflation? Because that's what shortages, obviously create. So what are you expecting as far as inflation goes in the price of coatings?
Unfortunately, I don't have any good news to share, Mark. I just keep getting bad news from my suppliers in terms of price increases on a regular basis. Unfortunately, I don't see the end in sight right now. You can talk about, is there going to be an economic downturn or something like that to slow things down? But until inflation comes under control, which, again, all those supply pressures we just talked about, they just keep continuing.
I spoke to somebody I know who went to the ACA show in Indianapolis. I don't know if you were there. And he was sharing that from about the time of the storm in February, Uri, to the last quarter of 2023, they expect inflation on the wholesale price of a can of paint to be about 50%. That's over about, whatever that is there, 10 quarters or something like that. And I heard him and thought to myself, this guy's nuts. Like, that's not going to happen. It's too much. And then the very next day, Rust-Oleum announced a 28% price increase.
It was a huge one out of them. We carry their products as well. And a shocker. I think they hadn't done much on the way up until that. So there's a lot of people have been doing quarterly increases. They hit it all at once. But
28%, it hasn't been 10 years since their last price increase. Maybe it had been 2 or something like that.
Right.
And so what can dealers do to sort of mitigate the effects of that? Is there anything that dealers can do to mitigate the effects of that?
I think some flexibility in products that are being carried is going to help on the supply side. Price is really broadly hitting across the board, though. So hard to mitigate price, but in terms of supply outages and gaps, looking at alternate products can be carried. Container sizes, maybe ports aren't available, but have your gallons available and be ready to sell 5 singles if you can't get 5s of something.
And it's interesting too. The point you were making before about sort of these rogue ingredients that could put an end to a product line. Those rogue ingredients are not necessarily the same at every manufacturer. Products have been formulated differently. Products are available in the marketplace. Raw materials are available in the marketplace differently. And so retailers may find that Dunn-Edwards is out of, a particular, satin finish interior enamel, but Benjamin Moore has one extremely similar to that, or vice versa. And it's really just because of that, one product is made with an ingredient that's not holding up the supply chain at the moment.
For sure. And logistics play a big part in what's available as well. So certainly having a diversified supply base, you've got a couple different manufacturers to call on, and hopefully one of them can help you out with exactly the product you need.
And are you seeing that among your dealer network, or are you seeing your dealers spread out beyond just buying from you guys and spreading the net a little bit wider?
Well, I think it's been tough to add a new supplier, I guess a new manufacturer, if you're the dealer these days, because everybody is relatively sold out. I think it's been easing lately. We've had a couple more inquiries lately and been bringing new dealers into the fold, and welcoming and supporting them. But it is a tough time when supplies are tight. You want to make sure you're protecting the loyal customers you've had for a while.
And for you guys, you're in a really tough spot because you have a dealer network and your own stores. And so, you need to balance the responsibilities to both channels, right?
Yeah, and I think we've been most successful when we're able to work closely with the dealers and really understand what are their inventory levels. I like to see paint end up on walls. So I want to ship a whole bunch to one of our stores to have it sit there in a back room and not get sold. And at the same point, if it's going to sit in the back room at a dealership, I'd rather put it into a store and get it sold. So understanding inventory levels and balancing that way has been our way to work through this.
And what about demand in your stores? I don't know if that's a part of the business that, you stay closely involved with, but a lot of the problems that are facing the paint industry right now, some of them are caused by shortages. And we talked about the resin situation and you talked about TiO2 now, but part of the problem is demand, right? The industry was designed to make 100% of its needs, and all of a sudden 130% showed up and said, I want the paint.
Yeah, and I guess fortunately here, as far as capacity, when we built this plant back, just over 10 years ago now, we built it for growth. So, I'm always excited to have plenty of open capacity. It's getting the raw materials to utilize that capacity there is the challenge on my personal end. And then as far as demand currently, it's been really heavy the first quarter, and a lot of that has been restocking. And I think not only is everybody trying to restock, certainly we have good visibility on our stores, but within the dealer network that we support, I think people are realizing the supply chain is fragile and trying to restock plus and get a little bit extra to cover the bumps that are coming up.
Well, buying toilet paper during a pandemic, right? I mean, it's basically the same thing.
There you go. And I'm trying to make sure nobody's got 20 rolls of toilet paper in the back room,
And so how are you managing that process with your dealers? Are you allocating materials? How is that working?
And, fortunately, the last quarter, it's been pretty much wide open. We've been at a restocking point. I think you go back to Q3, Q4, even back to Q2 of last year. And we were trying to understand, what are your inventory levels? Usually look at days of supply. How much supply do you have of this product for something that's got some regular flow to it? And if somebody really had a critical need, hey, we're going to run out of this in 2 weeks. We'd prioritize getting them covered and trying to avoid the outages there.
So tell me, what is Dunn-Edwards doing right now to help their dealers manage these shortages?
Really relying on our sales force, their knowledge, their experience to help addressing any challenges that come up. We've always had a lot of technical knowledge, and now our sales guys are really helping when needed with offsetting products, replacements, and communicating back. I talked about understanding inventory levels, and we're counting on our sales folks to bring back that information of where there really is a critical need, and we help to address that and get product to dealers when they need it.
So that's a great place to end it, Clay. Thanks so much for being on my show. Why don't you tell dealers how they can get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Sure. You can reach me, it's clay.fenstermaker. If you've got that name in the notes there, at DunnEdwards.com, DunnEdwards, all one word. And, we'd be happy to find some way to help you out with any of the challenges that you're facing.
All right. Well, thank you so much for making the time. Clay Fenstermaker, Vice President of Manufacturing for Dunn-Edwards. I appreciate your time this afternoon.
And my pleasure, Mark. It's been great talking to you.